Gene Simmons has never been the kind of man to fade quietly into the background. For decades, the Kiss frontman built his career on shock, excess, and a reputation for arrogance that he wore like armor. But now, at 76, the stories surrounding him feel heavier, darker, and impossible to ignore. Scandals, lawsuits, family drama, and unexpected moments of humility have turned his later years into a portrait of contradiction. What once looked like untouchable power is now tangled with consequences that even Simmons cannot escape, from survival to stardom. To understand why Gene Simmons's recent troubles are so striking, you have to start with his earliest days, long before the fire-breathing demon persona existed. He was born Chaim Witz on August 25, 1949, in Haifa, Israel, the only child of Flora Klein, a Hungarian Holocaust survivor, and her husband, Yehiel. His mother's silence about the horrors she endured in Nazi camps shaped him deeply. Simmons later admitted he felt he had no right to harm her by drinking or taking drugs, because life had already punished her enough. That vow of sobriety became his trademark, setting him apart from the chaos of rock culture. But his childhood was marked by poverty and loneliness. When his parents' marriage collapsed, his father remained in Israel while Flora and young Chaim left for New York in 1957. They arrived with no money, no English, and no family support. Flora worked exhausting factory shifts while her son taught himself English through comic books and television. By the time he graduated high school in 1967, he was already obsessed with American pop culture. He legally changed his name to Gene Klein, modeled after his cowboy idols, before eventually becoming Gene Simmons. Music soon consumed him. After brief stints as a teacher and odd jobs in butcher shops and magazines, he formed Wicked Lester in the early 1970s with Paul Stanley. Their first album was rejected and shelved, but Simmons refused to give up. Out of that failure came Kiss in 1973, an act so theatrical and bizarre that most people dismissed it at first. Fire-breathing, fake blood, and black-and-white makeup turned small club shows into unforgettable spectacles. By 1975, the live album Alive catapulted them from obscurity to arenas. Simmons, who once sold fruit by the roadside as a child, now commanded stadiums filled with tens of thousands of fans. Yet even in those early days, the seeds of today's controversies were being planted. Simmons learned to monetize everything, from Kiss lunchboxes to coffins, creating a billion-dollar brand. He also began documenting his sexual encounters with Polaroids, boasting decades later of nearly 5,000 women. The same drive that made him unstoppable in business also made him reckless in his private life, and those choices would eventually circle back to haunt him. A legacy stained by scandal. By the 2000s, Gene Simmons had already lived the dream of every rock star: millions of records sold, sold-out tours across the world, and a fortune estimated in the hundreds of millions. But success came with shadows. In 2006, A&E launched Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, a reality series that followed his life with longtime partner Shannon Tweed and their children, Nick and Sophie. For 7 seasons, fans saw a softer side of Simmons as a father, but they also saw cracks in his carefully built armor. The show documented Shannon's frustration with his refusal to marry, his constant flirtations, and eventually her discovery of his secret collection of Polaroids, photographs he had taken with thousands of women, each holding up the key to their hotel room. On live television, Shannon burned them, forcing Simmons to face his own addiction to ego and conquest. But that wasn't the only controversy that dogged him. In 2002, during a national public radio interview, Simmons shocked host Terry Gross by twisting a lyric from The Who into a crude sexual remark. "If you want to welcome me with open arms, I'm afraid you're also going to have to welcome me with open legs." Gross called it obnoxious, and Simmons later refused to let NPR air the full recording. In 2007, he became one of the loudest voices against file sharing, demanding lawsuits against teenagers who downloaded music. When anonymous hackers retaliated with cyber attacks that took down his website, Simmons doubled down, calling them cowards, further cementing his image as combative and unrepentant. Even more damaging were his comments in 2014 about suicide and depression. He claimed people threatening to end their lives should jump rather than speak about their pain, a remark that drew outrage from fellow musicians like Nikki Sixx and forced radio stations in Canada and Australia to ban Kiss from their playlists. Simmons eventually apologized, but the damage was done. That same year, he was honored with the Golden Medal in Barcelona, a reminder of how his career was still celebrated even as his words created headlines for the wrong reasons. By 2017, another scandal erupted when Simmons was permanently banned from Fox News properties after he stormed into a staff meeting uninvited, unbuttoned his shirt, and told crude jokes. Just a year later, he quietly settled a sexual assault lawsuit with a female radio personality who accused him of inappropriate touching during an interview. In 2019, former bandmate Ace Frehley publicly accused Simmons of groping his wife, calling him a sex addict. Marriage, family, and public cracks. For nearly 3 decades, Gene Simmons insisted that marriage was a trap. He repeated Groucho Marx's joke about not wanting to live in an institution, and on Family Jewels he proudly declared himself happily unmarried. But years of strain with Shannon Tweed finally reached a breaking point. In 2011, after 28 years together, she walked off a talk show mid-interview, calling him a pig. Later that year, she found his hidden stash of Polaroids, the evidence of thousands of affairs he had kept locked away. On national television, she set fire to them, a symbolic act that marked the end of his resistance. In October 2011, Gene Simmons finally married Shannon at the Beverly Hills Hotel, with their children Nick and Sophie standing beside them. That wedding was framed as a turning point, but the marriage did not erase the turmoil inside the family. Their son Nick, born in 1989, faced his own controversy in 2010 when his comic book Incarnate was accused of plagiarizing the Japanese manga Bleach. The publisher pulled the series, and Nick was forced to apologize, saying it was intended as homage. Critics dismissed the excuse, and the scandal followed him for years, even appearing as a subplot on the family's reality show. Sophie, born in 1992, avoided scandal, but could not escape the constant public gaze. As the daughter of one of the world's most notorious rock stars, she grew up in front of cameras, struggling to find her own identity, while her father's mistakes dominated headlines. Shannon, meanwhile, carried the emotional burden of living with a man who openly bragged about sleeping with 5,000 women. Therapy sessions filmed for the reality show revealed just how deep the wounds ran, with Shannon confessing she never agreed to an open relationship and Simmons admitting his fear of commitment came from childhood trauma. The show ended in 2012 after 167 episodes, but the family's struggles did not disappear. By then, Simmons was worth more than $400 million, much of it from Kiss merchandise, restaurants, and investments. Yet the money could not silence the criticism that followed him. In 2018, the death of his mother Flora at the age of 93 shook him more than any lawsuit or scandal. She had survived Nazi camps and raised him alone in New York, and Simmons often said she was his moral compass. Her passing revealed the vulnerable side he rarely showed, posting online that people should cherish their mothers. For a man defined by bravado, that grief was one of the few moments where fans saw Gene Simmons without a mask: politics, power, and backlash. If Gene Simmons built his career on saying the unsayable, his political views proved that he never intended to stop. A proud immigrant, Simmons often reminded audiences that America saved his mother from the Holocaust, and he saw his success as repayment for that debt. In the 2000s, he openly supported President George W. Bush, even defending the invasion of Iraq in 2003. On his website, he wrote that liberals who opposed the war were spitting on the graves of soldiers. His message was simple. America had once saved his family, and he would defend it no matter the cost. But Simmons's opinions often cut as sharply as his tongue. In 2010, he admitted he regretted voting for Barack Obama, blasting the healthcare reforms of 2009 and condemning Obama's suggestion that Israel return to its 1967 borders. To Simmons, such a move was indefensible. He also dismissed the United Nations as the most pathetic body on the face of the earth. In 2012, he threw his support behind Republican candidate Mitt Romney, arguing that America should be run like a business. His outbursts weren't limited to U.S. politics. In a 2004 interview in Australia, Simmons called Islam a vile culture, sparking outrage and accusations of racism. He later clarified that he was referring to extremists, but the damage lingered. When he visited Israel in 2011, he delivered press conferences in both Hebrew and English, calling artists who boycotted the country stupid. He described the trip as life-changing, meeting his half-brother and sisters for the first time and visiting his estranged father's grave. To Simmons, Israel was not just a homeland, it was proof of survival. Even in recent years, his bluntness has kept him in headlines. In 2021, he condemned Donald Trump's administration for its dishonesty, saying the lies of the past 4 years were beyond anything I ever thought imaginable. That same year, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Simmons called people who refused vaccination the enemy, and even evil. His words drew sharp criticism from some fans, but applause from others who saw him as unafraid to challenge dangerous rhetoric. Fortune, headlines, and the final years of Kiss. By the mid-2000s, Gene Simmons was not just a rock star. He was an empire. His face, painted in black and white, was stamped on more than 5,000 licensed products. Pinball machines, condoms, coffins, and everything in between. He co-founded the Rock and Brews restaurant chain with Paul Stanley, invested in a cannabis company in 2018, and even marketed a $2,000 vault collection of rare recordings. By 2015, his net worth had climbed above $400 million, built not only on music, but on a relentless drive to monetize every piece of the Kiss mythology. Yet even as the money flowed, scandals followed. In 2017, Simmons sparked outrage by attempting to trademark the devil horn's hand gesture, a symbol already linked to John Lennon and Ronnie James Dio. The backlash was immediate, and within days, he withdrew the application. Lawsuits also haunted him. Accusations from female employees at his Rock and Brews restaurants in 2016 and 2017 were settled quietly, while critics accused him of brushing off troubling behavior as baseless. Still, Simmons pushed forward, confident that nothing could dent his image. In December 2023, Kiss played their farewell show in New York City, closing 50 years of fire, makeup, and spectacle. But the goodbye was not truly the end. By 2027, the band plans to return in avatar form, inspired by ABBA's Digital Voyage concerts in London. For Simmons, it was another chance to sell immortality, even if flesh and blood Kiss was no more. Then came the controversies of 2024 and 2025. On Dancing with the Stars in October 2024, Simmons made comments about female dancers that went viral for all the wrong reasons, focusing on their beauty rather than their performances. Fans called him the creepy uncle, but he refused to apologize, insisting he stood by every word. Months later, in April 2025, Simmons launched a $12,495 VIP package that let fans act as his roadies for a day. Critics slammed it as tone-deaf in a struggling economy, but the packages sold out anyway, proving his ability to turn controversy into profit. August 2025 brought two events that put Simmons back in the spotlight. First, President Trump announced that Kiss would receive the Kennedy Center honors, sparking accusations of hypocrisy since Simmons had previously compared Trump's rise to cockroaches after January 6th. Simmons chose silence, letting the criticism play out without comment. Days later, he was performing solo shows at the Sturgis motorcycle rally, stripped of the full Kiss armor, but charging more than $500 per ticket. Some shows were canceled due to low sales, a reminder that even legends can fade when fans feel taken for granted. But the moment that cut deepest came on July 22, 2025, when Ozzy Osbourne died of a heart attack just weeks after his farewell concert in Birmingham. For decades, Kiss and Black Sabbath had walked the same road, pioneering heavy metal in the 1970s. On David Duchovny's Fail Better podcast in September, Simmons admitted that Ozzy's humility had taught him a lesson he never learned anywhere else. "It's a good lesson for idiots like me," Simmons confessed, acknowledging that even he sometimes let ego consume him. Calling Ozzy a giant and a good guy, Simmons showed a rare vulnerability, a moment of humility from a man defined by bravado, honors, charity, and contradictions. For all the scandals and controversies that have defined his later years, Gene Simmons has also been showered with honors that recognize his influence. In 2011, he was presented with keys to the cities of Dallas and Winnipeg. A street in Texas was renamed Gene Simmons Boulevard. In 2012, Revolver magazine gave him the Golden God Award, and in 2013, the Smithsonian accepted his Axe bass guitar into their permanent collection, praising him as an immigrant who turned survival and ambition into an iconic American story. In 2020, Guinness World Records certified Simmons for launching the highest flame projection ever at a concert, as well as the most flames in a single show, achievements that perfectly fit the image of the demon. Beyond the fire and spectacle, Simmons has shown his philanthropic side. Through Child Fund International, he has sponsored more than 140 children, even visiting Zambia during the filming of Family Jewels. In 2013, his family received the Mend Humanitarian Award for supporting Mending Kids International. He co-founded The Children Matter, a charity working with Matter to expand healthcare access worldwide. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he spoke out for safety and urged fans to wear masks, a rare moment when his voice aligned with public concern rather than controversy. And yet, the contradictions remain. Simmons insists he has never been drunk or high, living sober as a tribute to his mother's survival of the Holocaust. But his life has been riddled with sexual scandals and lawsuits. He has been hailed as a marketing genius, turning Kiss into a billion-dollar brand, but accused of exploiting fans with outrageous VIP prices. He has been called a patriot for his love of America, but ridiculed for his crudeness and arrogance. So what do you think? Has Gene Simmons earned his place as an untouchable rock legend, or have the scandals finally caught up with him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about the biggest names in music history.